everybody's got their guys, whether it's an area scout, a GM at the head of some major organization, or the three of us. Whether a UDFA trying to make a roster, whether you're a wide receiver trying to buck the trend of this NFL, or you're a quarterback that's looking to make the field, this is what we think is going on today on Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. And you already know, on Thursday episodes, we got our guy, Rob Rang, with us. You can find us all on social media, doing all that good stuff. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. But we're jumping into it, man. Some good stuff. And I like the idea of talking about some of our favorite undrafted rookie free agents from the 2022 class. And I think it's a class that of undrafted rookie free agents. One, looks like a solid one. Maybe we can say that every year. But the undrafted guys always get overlooked. And just on the episode coming up, you'll hear my guy Ryan and I talk about how starting cornerbacks for the 49ers, both undrafted rookie free agents. So out of this class, who are going to be those guys, right? The starters that make it out of being undrafted. All right, and Rob Rang, you got two guys on your mind, so let us hear it.
Oh, I got lots of guys on my mind, Eric, and that's the thing. I mean, like you're asking me to kind of narrow this down to just a couple of players, and that's always difficult because let's face it. I think you make a good point that undrafted free agents are always going to be a story after the draft. And there's guys that those of us in the media who have been hyping up for all year long, and then they wind up not getting drafted at all. And, we're kind of surprised by that. And I think that this year's draft class is a little bit special in that just because of the fact that the NCAA, of course, granted an extra year of eligibility to players, this year's draft class is just bigger than most draft classes that we've seen. So I think there's going to be more players who are going to wind up making NFL rosters this year than just about any year that we've ever seen. And so that in itself, I think, is a story. But so, kind of going with the low-hanging fruit here, I mean, one of the positions that I think that, wound up having a lot of guys that slipped out of the 7 rounds of the draft and signed in free agents that I think are going to actually end up making NFL rosters would be running back. And I think you can make an argument that could be cornerback, it could be wide receiver. To me, those are the 3 positions, running back, wide receiver, corner, that I think were just really saturated in this year's draft class with some really, really good players that wound up getting drafted in the 6th, 7th rounds. That should have gone in the middle rounds most years. And certainly some guys that wound up being undrafted free agents that should have been drafted. And so that's where I'm going to focus in on is 2 running backs. I'm really intrigued by Max Borghi from Washington State going to the Indianapolis Colts. I just think that his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, I think makes an awful lot of sense with what what the Indianapolis Colts are looking to do with Matt Ryan at the quarterback position. You want to get the ball out of his hands very quickly. I think Max Borghi makes a lot of sense in that respect. And the same thing with the Arizona Cardinals. Of course, Crock and I know in the NFC West, the way the Arizona Cardinals do what they do. I mean, they're not a team that's going to, ground and pound the way that a lot of clubs do. Certainly San Francisco and Seattle. The Arizona Cardinals want to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. They want to be able to have a running back who can move in space. And Ronnie Rivers from Fresno State is a guy who absolutely can do that. So I think there's a number of guys we could be talking about. But 2 of the guys that jump off of my list right off the bat, again, are the running backs, Ronnie Rivers in Arizona State, Ronnie Rivers from Fresno State going to the Arizona Cardinals. And then again, Max Borghi from Washington State going to the Indianapolis Colts.
What about you, Ryan?
I'm all over the place. I'll try not to double dip on your positions because you're right. Those are the saturated ones. For me, the one that I fit and what I was most surprised with is a guy that I think could play multiple positions for the Colts as well. JoJo Doman not getting drafted kind of surprised me, and I think he can fit into a bit of a strong safety role, a bit of a nickel linebacker role. Everybody needs coverage, and Darius Leonard isn't alone. I mean, Bobby Ogri's there, but I don't think Bobby plays coverage as well. And I could see a timeshare that I think really fits. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then I ran down wide receivers over at my site, folks. You can go sub to that at NFL33.com. And I ran down the wide receivers in particular because I agree with you. I think there's a lot of room there. And some of my favorites in there, I'm not going to harp on Jarrett Stearns, but will make a roster. It's the little return guy. And I think return special teams is what's going to help the receivers make rosters. And Britton Covey with the Eagles. I think he's a chance to take the load off of any of their other stars that might be a little on the undersized side and let somebody just do that and try to make a living. And I'm pulling for the kid.
Well, you talked about the Eagles just now, and I'm going to stick with the Eagles because they signed and made Carson Strong the highest paid, or the guy with the most guaranteed money out of any undrafted rookie free agent. All right, 320,000. 320,000.
I got a knee that works. I'll take that payday.
Right, guaranteed. Now, the big issue I think with why he even fell out of the draft was probably the medicals, right? The knee injury and how that's going to work. But if he's fine there and he has been wearing that knee brace, we saw him playing with it, then he's in a situation where, you get to see, okay, what happens with Jalen Hurd. If Jalen Hurd plays well, then you're good. If he doesn't, Carson Strong will have at least the opportunity to say, hey, maybe I could take control of things. And if he shows just enough, that might, persuade them to not take a quarterback early in the 2023 class, especially with the draft capital that they have. So Carson Strong, I think that's the most intriguing one to me because I think he is in the position to potentially be able to play. And then the other guy for me is Marquise Bell, safety out of Florida A&M. He goes to the Dallas Cowboys. This is a height, weight, speed guy, 6'2", 220 pounds, ran a 4.41, 36.5-inch vertical leap. A guy that made plenty of plays, 5 interceptions, 14 passes defensed in 2019. So you're talking about a guy that has a really high upside. Now, where's his downfall? He's not like a pure cover guy. He is probably a guy that likes to play a little bit more around the line of scrimmage. I think he could do that just fine. He's a missile, runs full speed into guys. If all else fails, he's going to be a terrific special teamer. I think that's how he's going to make the roster initially. But the Dallas Cowboys, they need help at that safety position. So I think having a guy like Marquise Bell that can be a special teams guy right now and eventually grow into maybe a starting role as a safety, that would be the most ideal situation. I think another reason why maybe he kind of fell out a little bit, there's some character concerns. Didn't spend a whole lot of time at Maryland when he was there. Spent some time at junior college, had some falling outs where he's going. So, the character thing, we'll see. But if he goes and becomes the player that FAMU had, I think he's going to be probably one of the better steals of the undrafted class. So, yeah, that's it for the undrafted guys. Plenty of guys. And you didn't even talk about John Ross. Did you touch on John Ross, Ryan?
Justin? No, Justin's pissed off. He's trying to make a point. I'm gonna let him make it. I'm not here to stick up for nobody. He's gonna be just fine.
All right. Justin Ross, he is pissed off, and I'm excited to see how everything goes with Justin Ross. We're gonna talk about a lot of these guys and throughout this process and how all that plays out. But up next, we're talking about speaking of guys like Justin Ross, some wide receivers and trends. Are we seeing something? Are teams kind of banking on that 50-year option? Do they not want to pay guys? Do they want to pay guys? Why are they trading for them? Are there a difference in philosophies? We're going to talk about all that and more up next. But first, we want to tell you a little bit about Built Bar. And I love brownies, but you know what I love more? The brownie batter. And it's not just me. I love the brownie batter. My kids love the brownie batter. All right. I love all that with Built Bars. All right. And sometimes I have to batter while I'm just making the brownies. Imagine if you could lick that brownie spatula clean and get some protein in it. Well, you are in luck because Built Bar has a new creation, and this one is better than ever. And we'll see if it rivals the birthday cake, because that was probably my favorite. All right. But again, they got the brownie batter coming out now. And, the puffs, they, still make all the protein that you need. It takes having a protein bar to a whole new level, and they're available right now at Built.com. Have you tried the Built Bar Puffs yet? I'm not sure what you're waiting for if you haven't, because again, I swear by them. I love the marshmallow. They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow protein bar on the market. All right. I don't know how you don't like them. All right. With 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 7 grams of sugar, the brownie batter puff, they're the perfect pick-me-up any time of the day. All Built Bar Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with the Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy eating it. And They are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. The Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you are eating a protein bar. All right. And, go to built.com right now. Get the Brownie Batter Puffs right now. Again, built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off of your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Plenty of shows all across the Locked On Network, whether it's Locked On 49ers, Locked On Kansas City Chiefs, Locked On Seahawks. Got a few guys here. Or just you want to hear just NFL talk. You got Locked On NFL talk across the board, especially with my guys Peacock and Williamson. So make sure you tune into everything that the Locked On Network has going on. All right, y'all. Let's talk about some of the trends that's going on at the receiver position. We still saw a ton of receivers go in the first round, but a couple of teams either reluctant to pay guys what the guys feel like they're worth. Deebo Samuel and the 49ers, A.J. Brown and the Tennessee Titans. Guys that have been very productive for their teams and showed that they can play at a very high level, but teams are like, we don't want to fork out a ton of money. The Baltimore Ravens, for whatever reasons, they traded Hollywood Brown, and it sounds like a little disgruntled with his usage and whatnot. He was a first-round pick. Guys are moving around at the receiver position, not playing at a high level. Do you think that this will make drafting a receiver first round with a fifth-year option a little bit more valuable? I'll start with you, Rob.
I think that it is. I think in this last year's draft class just kind of proves it. I mean, we saw 6 wide receivers go among the top 18 picks. That's never happened before, gentlemen. And we saw 13 receivers go in the first 2 rounds. That's never happened either. And this draft class was good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, very good at the wide receiver position. But I didn't see a guy who reminds me of Jamar Chase in this draft class. With all due respect to Drake London and with, Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, et cetera, I think this is a good wide receiver class. I think that in most years, we would have saw 3 or 4 of these guys go among the first round. And we saw 6 go in the top 20. I mean, I think that this is, something that NFL teams now are recognizing. Like, look, just because you have a wide receiver who's a superstar, that puts butts in seats. It doesn't necessarily put rings on fingers. And so I think that's one of the reasons why that the Kansas City Chiefs trade away Tyreek Hill. You mentioned already, Crock, about the Baltimore Ravens trading away Marquise Brown, a first-round receiver who's been very productive for Baltimore. DK Metcalf here in Seattle, Devontae Adams getting traded. I mean, my goodness, the list goes on and on about the wide receiver kind of turnover that we've seen in the NFL. And so that, to me, would be one of the very biggest kind of takeaways the 2022 draft. I think you're seeing a lot of NFL teams saying, hey, give me the young player that if we've got a good quarterback, we can make him into a superstar, rather than paying a wide receiver a whole bunch of money when they don't necessarily turn into winning a Lombardi trophy.
Right. And we've seen that, right? A lot of people have talked about at the receiver position, who's the guys in the current NFL where it's like, oh, this team won because of that receiver. Now, I think Cooper Kupp might put a little bit of that talk, make it a little quieter, right? But if you look at the best receivers in the NFL right now, a lot of them haven't been on teams that are winning the Super Bowl. Tyreek Hill, he did. Mike Evans, he's been the top receiver in the league. He did. But it feels like teams are attributing their postseason success to players around them as opposed to the actual receivers who are the playmaker guys. What do you think about some of these trends going on right now, Ryan?
For me, when you take a look at it, yes, there are certainly teams that don't want to pay the wide receivers. Obviously, Tennessee walked away from an elite player at their position that honestly, I think really hurts their offense. I question whether that was the right decision or not, but it was clear the decision they made. But as much as they didn't want to pay him, somebody did. And I think there's more teams that are willing to pay for that superstar pass, like Rob said, put butts in seats, get people excited. You sell more jerseys that way, you sell more beers in the stadium, and you do more in the parking lots. At the end of the day, yet each NFL franchise is business, and I think that's what they're thinking about. But I also think that for those that are going to pay elite superstar money, I mean, Devontae at what, 28 a year, Tyreek at 30, that also goes hand in hand with, if you're going to have one of those elite superstars, you got to have 4 guys that are on rookie contracts or very darn close to it. So it then emphasizes about going to get the elite talent in the draft so you can have them not only for the 5th year, but so you can get production out of them. So it's not like the old school 3-year, then the wide receivers finally kick in, right? You got to have guys that walk into offenses and can actually make an impact to pair with your elite superstars. So I think this is only the beginning. I think the wide receivers are going to become more and more prevalent in the draft, and we're going to see crazier and crazier deals in free agency and trades and everything else for those GMs that feel like I have to get that spark to help my offense put up points and get competitive.
Rob, you covered the Seattle Seahawks, and you briefly brought up DK Metcalf. And there were questions about would DK Metcalf be dealt, because you have a guy who's up for a contract right now and he's going to get paid top dollar. Do you pay a receiver top dollar when you are maybe in, I mean, they will never say it, especially with Pete Carroll, head coach, but kind of in a rebuild, right? Or reload situation. Do you fork out a ton of money to a guy like DK because you're going to have to pay him? Or do you say, you know what, we'll trade him away and kind of rebuild in another way, maybe hopefully draft a guy, because they're not only going to have to pay him, they're already paying Tyler Lockett as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I think that that's a really difficult conversation to have, because I think normally I think a lot of clubs would do exactly what the Baltimore Ravens and Tennessee Titans did. And you just trade that wide receiver away. Green Bay Packers as well. But at the same time, the Green Bay Packers, Tennessee Titans, Baltimore Ravens are built to win right now. And as you just mentioned, Crock, I mean, the Seahawks are going through a roster rebuild. And so I think that there's plenty of talk out there that what the heck are you doing, Seattle? Why would you pay this guy? Why did you just trade him? You just saw what the Titans received for A.J. Brown, what the Ravens received for Marquise Brown. I mean, my goodness, why wouldn't you trade a guy who's 24 years old? He some would argue is better than either of those two wide receivers that just got traded. My goodness, Seattle, do that. I think from the Seahawks perspective, and you can argue that this is right move or wrong move. I think it's the right move. I think that Seattle is looking to develop what they've already drafted. And they see a guy in Metcalf who is doing all the right things. I mean, he could have, decided not to participate in the mini camp and yet decided to do so. Didn't complain, hasn't said a word, has basically said that since the Russell Wilson trade, since Bobby Wagner got dropped, that instead this is his time to become that leader. I think Seattle is excited about the fact that they stole DK Metcalf at 64th overall a couple of years ago, and that he has become the leader, the dependable player, hasn't missed any games due to injury over his NFL career after missing some college games due to durability. I think that he is exactly what they're looking to build around, and that's why I do expect Seattle to wind up signing DK Metcalf to a long deal that quite possibly it's going to be the most lucrative contract that any wide receiver in NFL history has ever signed.
Man, listen, when DK Metcalf was coming out, I was one of his biggest advocates. I thought he was far and away. I don't want to say far and away, but I thought he was the wide receiver one in that class. And I had him followed up with Bo Samuel and A.J. Brown. Now, after that, I had Riley Ridley and Hakeem Butler, so I didn't do too good there. But my first three were pretty solid. DK Metcalf, it's been awesome to watch him and see how he's kind of grown in the NFL and how they've kind of just been able to use his height, weight, speed. We'll see if that can kind of continue when you don't have Russell Wilson throwing you those moon balls for you to run underneath. And I'm pretty sure they got some future odds over at BetOnline. Talk about what DK Metcalf is going to do. We're not going to predict that, but we are going to predict some NBA stuff. All right, you got the Miami Heat and Boston Celtics. You go to BetOnline right now, and they got Boston Celtics at plus 3.5 after that spanking Miami put on them in that big comeback last game. All right, any of those bets that you're trying to make, you definitely want to do them at BetOnline. Our partners over at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and much more. Head over right now to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action going on right now at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, y'all. So now, finally, we get to the position that makes the most noise in the NFL, and it's the quarterback position. And we're talking about a little bit of that 2022 quarterback class where a lot of people were really up and down on it. Well, I'd say most people were down on it and saying, oh, no, there shouldn't be a guy go first round. And, throughout the process, you start talking yourselves into guys potentially going number 2 overall, or definitely guys going top 10. Well, I think it happened more like we originally thought. And only one guy went first round, which was probably about right. And if I remember, Rob Rang, your original top 32 rankings, you had 2 quarterbacks in your top 32, but you had them very low. It wasn't like you had them top 20, top 25. I think they were even further past that. So, which one of these quarterbacks, because I did think getting drafted later, getting drafted 3rd round gave guys a great opportunity to go to some spots that could be more advantageous for them.
Yeah, I think that, obviously, if you have the Pittsburgh Steelers and they selected the wide receiver, or they selected the quarterback in Kenny Pickett 20th overall, you have an expectation that he is going to be able to come in and compete immediately. And that would be, I think the expectation at that point. But you have guys like a Desmond Ridder, a Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Carson Strong. We talked about Carson Strong before as an undrafted free agent. I think that you have to kind of move the meter back a little bit. And that to me is going to be one of the fascinating conversations about this draft class, guys, is that, Eric, as you just said, kind of in highlighting this topic, I think that a lot of NFL teams, it proved that the clubs don't view these quarterbacks as polished, as ready to compete immediately. And yet that's one of the kind of knocks on this. We see quarterbacks get drafted early, and then the fans go crazy when their team is not winning. Then why not play the young guy? Well, that's the biggest reason, in my opinion, why NFL teams, other than talent, NFL teams allow these quarterbacks to fall down the board, is they just wanted fans to be a little bit realistic about what a Malik Willis, for example, might be able to offer his club. And so rather than kind of focusing on the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, with Kenny Pickett, who I do expect to, start at least some games as a rookie for the Steelers, I'd rather focus a little bit more on a guy like Malik Willis. I mean, I just think that what he is going to be able to offer Tennessee is a guy that might be able to complement what Ryan Tannehill already is. I think he's going to push Tannehill. I think Tannehill's pissed off, frankly. I think that he's already proven that with some of the comments that he's already made. And I think that that's absolutely what the Tennessee Titans wanted him to have, that type of reaction. Just like Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. I don't think it's a coincidence that he had a great season this past year, or was it that close to pushing San Francisco into the Super Bowl. And same thing that Aaron Rodgers did a year previous after the Green Bay Packers shocked a lot of people by selecting Jordan Love. I think that Tennessee is looking to push Ryan Tannehill. But look at it from the Titans' perspective. I mean, they got Derrick Henry coming back. And we talked about before, I mean, it's going to be a huge transition going from A.J. Brown to, Trayvon Burks. As much as I like Burks, still, that's a big transition. But you put in a guy who's as dynamic as Malik Willis is immediately in kind of, little formations that allow him to do a few things as a runner, an occasional passer, with the thought being that he can be your quarterback of the future in year 2, year 3. To me, that is a natural progression. That's a lot of the quarterbacks that we've seen have success. Patrick Mahomes, Ryan, I'm going to go to you. Obviously Mahomes has become since an NFL MVP. A lot of people, revisionist history would say that, hey, Patrick Mahomes came to the NFL and he was a superstar from day one. And that wasn't the case. He had an opportunity to kind of sit and learn behind Alex Smith for a year. And I think that's the easiest way for quarterbacks to be successful in the NFL, is allow them a little bit of grace time. And not very many guys in this draft class are going to be pushed onto the stage immediately. And that's one of the reasons why I think that this quarterback class actually has a chance to surprise people a little bit.
I'm in for the surprise, because I think everybody's sleeping on the guy that's going to get the biggest boost. I like what you said. I do think Pickett will start games this year, but I think Mike Tomlin's going to be a little bit slower to put him in, knowing that Trubisky's seen and been under fire in the league. I think there is going to be an aspect of that slows down the timetable for Kenny Pickett in particular. And I'm really interested to see if they put a package in for Malik Willis. But I think the guy that is going unheralded and the guy that has the best chance to start the most games, and I said it yesterday, Crock, and you can throw stuff at the screen if you want, but you can't hit me. It's Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder could start 15 games. I'm telling you, I don't think that Marcus Mariota can hold him off for long. And I'm not down on Mariota. I think he's a solid player. But at the end of the day, especially when you're trying to get to accurate passing to huge targets that can actually catch the ball and make some yards after the catch. That's the key. It's not just about using their catch radius, which I think Mariota relies on sometimes. So for Pitts and now Drake London, I think the key is going to be the faster Ridder gets up to speed and the faster they give him the reins, the better for that organization. I think Terry Fontenot hit it out of the park, drafting him and getting a leader in that room. Yes, he's got some accuracy issues. We'll deal with that. It will come along. But I think Ridder's the guy that has the fastest timetable to get onto the field as a rookie.
I think Matt Corral and Ridder probably went to the best places for them to be able to get on the field. But I think if we're talking about one that's set up for success the most, it's definitely Malik Willis. Because right now, they have Derrick Henry in that backfield. And when you can lean on him and then every once in a while do a nice big bootleg and drop back and throw the ball out there and use your big arm and let guys run underneath the ball, whether it's, I know they got Robert Woods and obviously drafting a guy like Treylon Burks, but being able to kind of utilize that guy off of the play action and what it does to a defense when you have Derrick Henry in the backfield, I think he's set up for the most success. Now, how much longer would Derrick Henry last? Because we see in the NFL, these running backs, once they start having some little injuries here and there, they fall off a cliff fast. And Henry has played at a very high level, but he had the foot injury last year. You got to hope that doesn't happen again. And even if it doesn't happen this year, which I don't anticipate Malik Willis having any type of big, contributions this season unless Tannehill just completely falls off a cliff, and I don't see that happening. We won't see Malik Willis until likely next season. So I'm curious to see how that whole thing plays out, but if there's any guy that's set up for the most success, especially with terrific coaching, stability in the organization, they understand who they are and their philosophy, I think it's Malik Willis with Tennessee.
I think it's Malik Willis, Tennessee. I think Desmond Ridder, as Ryan just pointed out, with the Atlanta Falcons. And I mentioned him just real quickly, Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell in Washington is an interesting one. We know Ron Rivera as head coach. He wants to go with a veteran. And, of course, they made the trade for Carson Wentz. They got a guy in Tyler Henneke who's a good player. He's just a capped player. He is what he is. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised at all if all goes to hell in a handbasket a little bit in Washington, which, hey, let's admit it. I mean, it's just the nation's capital. That happens sometimes. I mean, I think that Sam Howell could actually surprise people with how quickly he gets onto the field. And I'm a big believer in Howell. I especially like his deep ball. And considering the talent that Washington has at the receiver position, he would be another one that I think is kind of people are sleeping on a little bit. I thought the NFL teams slept on him. I thought that he should have been a third-round pick, not a fifth-round pick. And I was stunned that he fell as far as he did. And so he would be another one that kind of to the point that Eric and Ryan made earlier, I think could surprise some people.
I like that match of having Diami Brown on that roster for him too. I think that helps him when he gets on the field quite dramatically. That's really nice. And Malik, if you're listening, I'm not down on you, buddy. I'm just warning you. Don't take over too early because they're going to trade away all your weapons. I'm just telling you right now. So do what you can do, buddy, and keep your legs under you.
Well, we won't trade you away, Ryan, or you, Rob. We appreciate you. Every time you tune in, Rob comes on. He's here for every Thursday episode to talk all things NFL draft with you all. We definitely want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, you got Locked On 49ers, you got Locked On Chiefs, and you got Locked On Seahawks over there. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On NFL Draft. We'll see y'all Friday. Peace.